back to Cityline. With me right now, I have somebody who is probably the most popular person in downtown Tacoma and anywhere where there is a parking spot. And if you don't know him, please join me in welcoming Eric Husby. He is the parking service manager for the city of Tacoma. Good morning, Eric.
Morning, Amanda. That's a heck of an introduction. Thank you.
You are more than welcome. So, Eric, now that Pierce County is in phase 2 of the Washington State Recovery Plan, on-street parking system for the city of Tacoma has resumed. We graciously had a period when we were sheltering in place and when we transitioned. So what does that exactly mean right now at this moment?
Sure. And so you're right. Back in March 16th, we shut off a couple elements of our parking system. One was the on-street pay station meters downtown. And then we went to limited enforcement. So that essentially meant our enforcement guys were doing life safety and ADA types of violations. As of last week, July 6th actually was the first day that we turned that system back on. So what that looks like right now is if you come downtown, you're expected to pay for on-street parking via the meter. And then if you don't pay or you're in what we refer to as kind of overtime status, our enforcement folks will be enforcing those types of violations.
You know, I can hear people in the audience saying right now, well, why do we have parking downtown anyway? I've lived here for years and it wasn't always metered. And Eric, let's remind them how the parking downtown came to be and what were the voices behind it.
Sure. And so the city has a long history with parking meters. I think back in the 40s was when we first installed parking meters. And then we went through a transition phase in the 70s where those meters were pulled out in response to the Tacoma Mall and the push to want free parking. And they thought that was kind of the barrier to getting customers into the downtown. Our system now is really was kind of founded in probably about 2008. Or so. There's a group of stakeholders. The group now still exists. It's called the Parking Technical Advisory Group. Their predecessor was a different, it went by a different name, but essentially it's the same core group that really came to the city and said they wanted to be part of a process. And they acknowledged that pay parking was not necessarily the evil that they once thought it was. And so this group is a group of stakeholders who ultimately in 2010 galvanized around a pay station system downtown that prioritized the customer, client, and visitor. And they are still very relevant in what we do today. So anything you see downtown, whether it's the pay stations, whatever the time limits are, that's really an outcropping of some significant and deliberate conversation with that group, with the supreme focus of being, the priority being the customer, client, and visitor. So they continue to provide guidance and policy as we go through, always with that lens of trying to create turnover in the on-street system.
Absolutely. I mean, we have business owners that need to have those parking spaces being almost recycled. And if somebody is parking there the whole day, that impedes people's ability to come into their businesses and to buy things. And then, of course, that ripple effect is just huge. Yep. Eric, when we talk about geographical boundaries of the pay station system, what are we talking about in terms of that?
So generally speaking, I mean, there's a few pockets throughout this general area that I'll outline that don't have pay stations. But generally speaking, you go from basically 7th to 21st. We have pay stations all the way up the hill, up on Yakima, all the way down to Dock Street. And so again, there's a few pockets where it's just time limited, but generally speaking, that's where our pay stations reside.
Outstanding. Now, in an effort to support the evolving needs of the community and particularly food service businesses through this unprecedented time, the city has made available loading zone signs to help facilitate activities that our businesses need. How did that come about?
So really it was, we, when we shut off our system, we started to look at kind of the relevance of what we do. And that's really, our group is really predicated on being purposeful. We don't want to force feed ourselves onto anybody. And so we started to take a look, and that's one of the reasons why we shut off the pay stations. It's why we kind of rolled back a little bit of our enforcement, was in large part because some of the purpose for that was managing inventory and those types of things. And that inventory just wasn't there. And so then we started to think about, okay, what are the things, what are the mechanisms do we need to have at the time? It was even before phase one, right? Everything was kind of on lockdown, and you just had businesses that could open up and could have just, basically pick up and drop off. And so coming out of those conversations, we propped up a curbside pickup program. In large part, too, we acknowledged that there was going to be some influence on the on-street system. Once you turn everything off and you don't enforce it, people, longer-term folks, are going to park there. And so we wanted to be able to have some prioritized use for those businesses that required that or that needed that. I would just tell you, Amanda, that the program has been terribly successful. We have about 30 curbside loading zones throughout the city. It's not just downtown. It's just anywhere that anyone would want this priority. I think we're getting pretty close to about 10 of these ADA spaces as well. Again, that was kind of the acknowledgement that that's a historically marginalized group that if the street system is completely parked up, they need that close access. And so it was just one of those things where we started to kind of retool and pivot and say, okay, if we're not in this arena anymore where we're trying to influence that turnover, what programs can we put into place that are going to be purposeful during this time?
Well, I just want to personally say thank you, because let me tell you something. I love the curbside pickup. I think as we all try to support businesses that are still just doing takeout and not dine in, it is really wonderful to have contactless way to get a beautiful dinner and keep that business going. Now, speaking of keeping businesses going, when we look at normal parking spots, Eric, what's the maximum amount of time that you can park in a spot?
So it's going to depend. And a general counsel is to look at the signs in the area, right? We have any number of regulations. So what I would recommend individuals doing is when they park, kind of look at what the regulations are. That could be a 2-hour product, a 5-hour product, et cetera. But it's really going to be dictated by the signs and where you park.
Most of the time when I'm downtown, I'm in a 2-hour spot. If my time limit goes, let's say I've reached my time limit, can I pull back out and pull back in?
So you can't, you cannot on the same block phase. And so you're right. So the general, if downtown for the most part is a 2-hour zone. And we have some pockets by the University of Washington that are 90 minutes and some stuff on Dock Street that's 5 hours. But you're right, the general downtown core is a 2-hour product. What the regulation would require you to do, you can pay for that 2 hours. And then what you have to do is you have to move off of that block phase. So you can move across the street, you can move around the corner, and then your time resets. If you're in a pay station area, you'd have to repay for that 2 hours. But the max amount on that particular block phase is going to be dictated by the regulation signs on that block phase.
Good. That's really good to know that, because I'm downtown and I'm going over, or I want to stop at a different business. It's good to know what the boundaries are for those 2-hour parking spots. Now, you recently launched a touchless parking payment option with the launch of the new mobile app. Let's talk about that app and explain it to us, please.
Sure, and this is something that we're very excited about. This is, again, coming out of early conversations. We acknowledged we did an entire touch point analysis of our parking system to identify not only on street but off street. How can we get people in and so they don't have to touch things? And so even down to stairwell doors being propped open, and elevator buttons being covered. I mean, there's all that type of stuff. We did know that one of the areas where a lot of people are going to be touching, similar to when you go to a grocery store, we all pay at the keypad. Our pay stations historically have operated in that way, which is you have to go to the pay station, you enter your time, you put your credit card in. So we knew that was kind of a point that we wanted to try to see if we can't eliminate that touch point or at least provide an alternative. So coming out of those conversations, we ended up propping up a mobile pay application. It's through a vendor called Flowbird. The application, what you end up doing is you set up an account. It takes about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes to fill out the account. You put in some information, email address, a credit card. You can load up your vehicles into it. But what's really great about it is it allows you to pay for your parking via your cell phone. B, it gives you the opportunity to add more time. So if you only want to buy an hour and then your meeting ran a little long, it'll allow you to add more time up to the maximum on that block face. So that's terribly convenient, and it allows people to potentially avoid parking citations. But probably most importantly, in this environment right now, it eliminates that touch point. It allows you to pay for parking in a safe manner.
Well said, my dear. So let's recap this before I have to say goodbye to you. So the downtown business owners, for people who want to know, came to the city requesting that metered parking be implemented. And parking is a deal downtown compared to bigger cities like Seattle. It's it's $1 per hour, maximum 2-hour limit. And then we have this new app called Flowbird to allow for touch-free payment. I'm going to tell you, you guys are just kicking it down there with doing everything you can to make this easy for us.
I appreciate that, Amanda, and you hit everything nail on the head. And part of our role in this, we know we play a role in the recovery for these small businesses. It's something we take very seriously. We know we don't have all the answers at this point. And so as we go forward, we'll continue to stress the need for us to be nimble, to be able to pivot, to be able to look at the data, and continue to support those small businesses.
Eric, thank you to you and your team for thinking ahead in these unprecedented times and knowing that we will be working through different phases and having those answers for us as we all safely navigate this. Thank you again so much, Eric.
Thank you, Amanda.
You're welcome. We have much more to come on Cityline, so don't go away. We'll be right back.